the last couple of weeks we've had some business leaders in, and we have in the next number of weeks we have some pretty amazing folks coming in as well that are beyond the photo industry. But I love to kind of keep grounded within our industry and what we're about. And today is a real treat. We have Zack and Jody Gray on, and I'll bring them on right now. I'll welcome you guys to the show.
Hey,
Glad
hey.
you guys are here.
What?
What up? And the topic of today is going to be around how do you kind of keep clients for life and build for the long haul, and not just in the kind of the immediate kind of hit of a session, but and I'm sure the conversation will go in a lot of different directions. But for those of you who are getting to know you guys, or maybe they're kind of in my community and or in vice versa, maybe if it's helpful, I can let people in your community know who I am, whatever. But will you share a little bit about your journey in the photo industry and as small business owners, what it's been like since you've been professional photographers?
We'd love to tell you about it.
Well, kind of my journey into photography is actually started with my mom when I was a wee little lass, and she kind of gave me the love for photography, and I just carried that with me throughout my college years. And I went to college, got a degree in speech communication, and I came to Nashville and started working in the music industry. But I've always just had this love for photography, and that kind of really came to life when this man came around.
Yeah, and I grew up in a tiny, tiny little town in northern Minnesota, believe it or not, in the middle of nowhere. And I kind of grew up, my family split up when I was a kid. So it's just my mom and us four kids together, kind of scraping by, trying to just have a life. And I was very poorly educated, didn't even graduate from high school, got my GED when I was 21 years old. Was working in a tie store, literally selling ties, and
That's
a youth
awesome.
pastor one day took me out to lunch and was like, Zach, what are you doing here? Like, you could go do something else other than what you're doing. And literally, little did I know that this was going to be one of the most paradigm shifting lunches of my entire life. This guy, Clayton Ring, literally changed my life forever by encouraging me, hey, you can go out and do something more. And literally from that point on, I left, started playing music professionally, moved to Nashville, and met my amazing wife kind of in that whole process.
Like all musicians do.
Exactly, yeah. And that was my first love, was playing music. And then after about 3 years of that, Jody and I were about to get married, and I was not making any money, unfortunately, because I didn't understand that there was a business to music. And I was kind of back at that place again at 27 going, now what? Now what am I going to do? And I got a day job off of careerbuilder.com shooting yearbook photos. And I hated the job. But I went, man, this photography, this is cool. Like, this is interesting. And I went to my wife and I said, hey, I think we could do this ourselves for a living. And she's like, I like photography, let's do it. And we literally, on a wing and a prayer, in a sense, just started our photography business. And we booked 19 weddings from June to the end of the year in 2007, shot our first wedding for $500 big dollars, in June. It was like, what?
Big time.
We thought we were big time.
Woot.
Yeah. And then to kind of wrap it up, by the
That's
end
great.
of that fall, we went, man, this is cool, but we're not making any money. Like, how do we make this succeed? And it kind of dawned on us through some relationships that we had that the biggest thing that was missing was the business of what we were doing. Our work was getting good. We were passionate. We were working really hard, but we needed the business to work. So we spent a lot of time and energy working on our business model, our positioning, our branding, and our marketing. And we set a 5-year plan. And by February of the new launch of our business was January of 2008. And by February, we hit our 5-year goal. And it was unbelievable. And ever since then, our business has just grown and grown and grown and grown. And we've been able to give more, to help more, to encourage people more. And now our business for photographers has kind of been a thing that go, hey, look, if you want to do do something with your business, you can do it. And that's become another big passion of ours, is enabling photographers to get out of wherever they were and go to the next place.
Yeah, because I think oftentimes photographers are like, okay, I need to become a photographer, so therefore I need a degree, I need to take this, I need to make sure I learn Photoshop, or just like they have all these lists of things that they think they have to conquer in order to be successful or to make a living, or however you define that. And like for us, it's just we've worked really hard at it and just read business books and learned and talked with others. And so like kind of our story is that, you know, if we can do it, you can do it.
Yeah. If the kid from northern Minnesota can run a good wedding business, then anybody can.
I love it. You know, it's so interesting. Your story, I'm reading the chat room as we're going through this, and one little piece of feedback just that people are saying is they relate. There's just so many folks that are in the same kind of predicament that you're describing, except for it's not. They're not in your shoes. In this current reality, they're more in the tie salesman moment, and they're reflecting on how much they want something more. They want something. It's not that, you know, being a tie salesman is a bad thing. It just is a very little existence, if that's kind of the sum total of what you're about. And I think that there's a lot of new possibility that could open up for people. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about that conversation, that pivot point where your friend sat you down and said, you know, what's going on here? And I'd love to, if you could distill any kind of insights that could be transferable, that weren't just for you in that moment, but were somehow messages that you think others could really benefit from, that he was articulating. I wonder if you could share a little bit about that, Zack.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I think that for us, you know, as we've, you know, done a lot more work with photographers and done different workshops and speaking gigs and whatnot, that I think the big thing that really helped when I had that conversation, this was now 10 years ago, you know, I had this conversation with the youth pastor, and he encouraged me to do something different, and go and do something I didn't think that I could do. I think the reason that it worked is because I actually did it. You know, I think the biggest problem that so many people face is just that fear of stepping out into the unknown and chasing their dream. You know, it's like, it's scary, and it's a continual thing. It doesn't stop. Like, you start chasing the dream, and then it's the next thing that you have to go, oh my gosh, we're walking out on the ledge again and again and again. And I think something that we see a lot when we're, you know, working with photographers, enabling photographers, and the big difference between those that succeed and those that I think that don't are the ones that take the leap, that take the risk, that go and say, you know what, this is my life, this is my career, and I'm going to do something exciting, and I'm going to make this thing work. I'm going to go out and do it, and actually doing it. That's the hardest part, is actually doing it, I think, more than anything else.
And I think too that on an even, like, to break it down even more, like on an even practical level, like for us it was really that thought of changing from the value is in our art and our pictures, but photography is a commodity now, so anyone and everyone can shoot a photo. And to be honest, the average bride or mom or whomever, the average client can't tell the difference between okay photography and great photography. So we were working so hard to make sure our craft was great, because that's without a given. You want your art to, you know, the services that you offer to be great for clients. You want the photos to be good. But it was that year we were just focusing on our art and our craft, and that was really good, but things still weren't like clicking. We were just running really hard and working really hard, and we were just making very little, which to us at that time, we were like, sweet, we're getting paid. We had bumped our pricing up to like $1,500 a wedding. So we're like, awesome, you know, we're getting paid $1,500. This is huge. But then when we started doing the math and figuring out our expenses and taxes and stuff, we're like, this is a lot of work for little. And our work is really great. So what is it that we're missing? And for us, it was like, we're missing the business aspect. We need to really focus on the business of our photography.
That's great. I love what both you guys are saying. I mean, both from the kind of clarifying approach of, you know, are we doing this properly? Are we doing more than just the art? How are we building this business? And I also love this kind of ownership of what's required to actually take initiative and actually move. And and yet I know that you've bumped into this, I've bumped into this. There's still a very cynical approach out there of yeah, but what if I go for it and I fail? And I'm just curious what you guys think about failure, because it's a necessary requirement. It comes with the territory. I don't know any entrepreneurs that haven't experienced at least short-term failure en route to learning and then a chance to reset. But how do you go about sorting through those roadblocks or obstacles that are in the way of what your vision is, and making that real?
Like, I mean, you have to try it, and we've learned so much from failure. And I would love to share this little story where we had this idea to do some like marketing and advertising. We're like, this is the golden idea, and we have this festival in the town that we live in called Franklin.
This is when we first started out, just so you know.
To clarify, I think this was even before we shot our first wedding. We were just like, hey, we think we can do this photography thing. And so we were like, let's make some money and we can shoot kid photos, right? So there's this festival going on downtown, like a Halloween fest, and this was in 2006, I think. And so I had this genius idea the morning of, I was like, babe, we should create some flyers, go downtown where all these parents are with their kids, we'll get a big bag of candy, and I'll be the non-creepy woman with like candy to like entice the kids, and I'll say hi to the parents, and that'll like break the ice. And then Zach, he has this camera around his neck, and then we hand them like a flyer. Like, great idea,
creepy.
right? So I created this document in Word, and like we printed it off at Kinko's on like the cheapest paper in black and white, because we didn't have a lot of money, right? And so we went downtown and we handed out like 100 of these flyers and like stuck them under like windshields of cars. And guess how many calls we got from that?
None.
We were like, what? Like,
how's that possible?
What is wrong? And we realized it was the whole approach that was off. We were there trying to sell ourselves, as opposed to if someone else were there being like, we're just talking to a friend. Oh my word, Zach and Jody shot my kid, and the photos were amazing, and it was awesome. You need to book them. Like, how different would that be instead of like creepy camera guy and like candy bag woman?
Yeah, and I think too the hurdle that you have to get over with, you know, worrying about the failure and going, what if I step out and I try this and it doesn't work? I think that you know, it's for Jody and I, the biggest blessing we ever had was there was a handful of photographers in Nashville that really just opened up their hand to us and kind of went, here, like, this is how we do our pricing, this is how we book some clients, and this is how we run our business and made some money doing this. And we started realizing there was so many other people that had already figured out methods to success, and we just needed to do what we were naturally good at, which was we love being around people, and we're people, and we just need to build relationships. And the more we did that, and the more we focused on that, and the more that these other photographers kind of helped us, that helped us get us, you know, to where we wanted to go. And we realized that it was really, really vital for us to look at people that were very successful, people that were writing best-selling books, and people that had coached 25,000 small businesses, and people that had already been making six figures shooting weddings, or, you know, doing their photography or whatever it was, and glean from their wisdom and take that and kind of make it into our own thing, and not just trying to rely on ourselves the whole time, because our ideas were like, we don't know anything about business and marketing, let's go put a flyer under somebody's windshield, you know?
And now we know not to do that.
And that didn't work, you know, so.
I laughed. Stacey said, oh, you guys were totally creepers. Crying.
Totally. Okay, no lie. I love your story. I love your story in 1,000 levels, because I actually had a not too dissimilar story where I was invited to go photograph this. Well, I thought it was opportune. It was actually like a Halloween event at this local area. Our church was putting it on, and they actually called it. What do they call it? They didn't call it Halloween, because that's not what Christians do. But it was some kind of pseudo Halloween, and no kidding. Yeah, right, whatever, exactly. With the neck swivel, that's great. And what happened was, I got there and I was thinking, this would be such a great opportunity. I'll pull my camera out. This would be great. And we actually had cops there who were helping, kind of, because it was, you know, Southern California. And we want to be sensitive to, you know, safety and that sort of thing. And the cop was describing who you need to look out for, and he literally described, look for the guy who's in their 30s and 40s, who probably has a camera around their neck, and they're wanting to talk with kids, and like he was talking about sex offenders, and I was sitting there going like, oh my gosh, I almost dressed up like one for Halloween. It was it would have been hilarious. So thankfully I didn't go down that road, and all's well. But yeah, no kidding. But I mean, the bigger picture of what you're describing about almost in a sense kind of getting over yourself and putting yourself out there thoughtfully and asking yourself, what would it be like to get to receive the invitations that you're offering from the user's perspective? And who doesn't want to work with people that other people rave about? And who doesn't want to get access to the people who have a great relational experience as well as have great photographs to show for it? So just fantastic insights there, you guys. Thank you. I'd love to hear even a little bit more, but before I do, I want to bring up some questions because folks are asking. Kevin Simcock asks a question. How did you go about booking your first gigs? Was it trade show ads? And you talked a little bit about this already, but talk about not only your first gigs, but how you got the next round of gigs once people started finding out about you.
Totally. It really began, I mean, when we started seeking out weddings at the beginning of '07 because we were like, weddings is what we're going to focus on. That's what we're going to pursue. So when we realized that and made that decision to go after it, we really started with our network of friends because that was before Facebook was a really big tool. And then, believe it or not, we put up advertisements on Craigslist. And because if anyone's looking for a wedding photographer on Craigslist, you know, obviously their standards aren't that high. So we got some experience because the biggest thing is you can't shoot weddings for the most part if you don't have a portfolio to show. But you can't get a portfolio if you don't shoot a wedding. So it's like this catch-22, and what do you do? So we advertised on Craigslist and said, hey, we're getting into wedding photography. We just want some experience. We'll shoot for free, give you the disc of images. And so we shot in addition to some other photographers. You know, it was like an Uncle Bob shooting the wedding, and he was cool with the shooting and giving the disc of images. He didn't care. So that's kind of how we built up our portfolio. And then we were shooting weddings for just like a couple who found us on like Craigslist and just utilizing that network of
most of the weddings we shot our first year were, you know, our very first wedding was a couple in our Sunday school class. It was somebody that we knew. They knew what we could do. They'd seen the little bit of work that we had done, and they trusted us. You know, they didn't care too much about their photos, and they were willing to, you know, pay us 500 big ones to shoot. And then most of the other weddings we shot that year, with the exception of maybe one or two, which was 19 weddings total, were all just relationally built. They were just people that we had met and people that we knew and people that knew somebody that we knew, and they heard that we had a business and they said, oh yeah, for $1,500 your guys' work is great, and they thought we were a steal, and they started booking us and booking us and booking us. And once we booked a couple of weddings and we were building these relationships, and they started referring us to their friends.
And it also started too by we went out to any and every networking meeting. And we were there building relationships with the planners. And a few of those weddings, like thinking back that first year, came from planners.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, as you're telling your story, one common theme I've heard, we've had a lot of conversations with folks on the show for over the last couple of years, and a common thread that I hear about people when they talk about those early years is specifically around they hustled. They worked whatever warm market angle they could. They put themselves in the space. They did it wrong. They did it right. But what was absolutely common across everybody is the sense of we had a sense of urgency to it. We were fighting for our kind of entrepreneurial lives, so to speak. And it's interesting how much that I think it's discounted from the outside looking in when folks they haven't fully committed yet. Like they're thinking, I want to go get this photo business working or some creative pursuit, and they aren't clear yet on what it's going to take for them to be on the line, to be all in. And I love that. And then it also sounds like once you got some momentum going, then it was, you could kind of switch gears to like second gear. And first gear wasn't just rev up, or second gear wasn't just rev up. Second gear was like a different way of being, where you could be more thoughtful about how you got to where you were, how would you reset, how could you go after a new market. And given that we're in a different time now, like it feels like ages ago, like, woo, 3-4 years ago. Now here we are. It does feel like a long time ago. If you were to do it all over now, like let's say you had access to gears 1 and 2, and maybe even 3 and 4, would you do anything different? Would there be pieces to the pie where you go, well, it actually it's this question, because Algernon, this is a great question. He says, what's your best advice for someone starting out and having trouble finding clients? On some level, it's like the first question, but I'm interested from the perspective of knowing what you know now. If you were going to go out and redo your first year or first half year, what would you do now, knowing what you know now, if you had nothing to show for it? Like you had to really start from scratch, except for you had your brain trust to go about doing it.
Yeah, awesome question. I think honestly, a lot of what we did in the beginning with the wedding side of the business, which ended up being the main business, I think it would be mostly the same for the most part. And what we were talking about earlier too, I just wanted to hit on that as well. You were saying about people that maybe aren't full in or they're not totally gung ho. I think determination was one of the biggest things, the biggest advocate that we had going for us was that we were determined to make this happen. We were going to find clients anywhere we could get them. And in the very beginning, I think it's important to just get clients. It's not important to selectively pull out clients and be so specific with the marketing necessarily from the get-go, even though that can work. But I think in the beginning it is important just to shoot and to get experience. And I think we would do the same, or a lot of the similar stuff we did, except we'd probably do it through Facebook and through Facebook. Honestly, because that is it's usually a 6-level deep network. Like if you know one person in Facebook, you can potentially meet up to 5 other people deep that you don't know.
That's right.
Even in 2007 when we started, that was unheard of to be able to access literally 1,500 people just by knowing one person. I mean, it's unbelievable. Right. So we'd probably do the same thing where, we'd have a fan page. We would do just what we did, which was invest in our marketing and branding. The way that the business looks is so critical. You can have amazing work, and if you don't look professional, people won't take you seriously.
They won't trust you.
They won't trust you. So if you have legitimate branding, legitimate marketing, you have consistency across all types of media with what you're doing, and you say, hey, I have a business, I'm legit, I've got experience, take a look at my images, look at my website, and it's all there, and you start connecting with people on Facebook and saying, this is what I do, and your first few gigs, you're just pricing it to get the gig. You're out there just shooting and shooting and shooting. And then once the demand goes up on yourself, then you can start reassessing and go into gear 2. Once people are wanting your product and service.
So I think if I had to break it, if we had to start cold turkey, if you took away, did you want to say something?
Well, okay. I wanted to hear from you, Jody, because I'll just keep talking for 1 second. 1 second. Like one of the things I'm really interested in, and I'm sure you're going to comment on this, is could you tell me a little bit about as you're retelling what you would do different? Talk a little bit about trust too, because there's something in when you guys said how your branding needs to match not just to sell stuff, but to build trust. That is a striking idea that I think is under talked about and critical. So keep talking, Jody. I sorry for cutting you off.
No, sorry for cutting you off. When it comes to trust so we do this 6-hour business workshop, right? And so in part of that, we talk about branding. And, I wish I had the flyer with me. But we're in this development, and for some reason, in this 1 week, we got hit with all of these advertisements, right? And they were hanging on. The place that we live. Yeah. Hanging on our door. And there was this one that I looked at it, and it was for house cleaning services. And I looked at the card, I was like, ooh. And it was, you could tell the person had created their card themselves. There was spelling mistakes. And on the other side, it was for car detailing. So the card as a whole didn't even make sense, and it was a little janky. So I was just going to throw it away, right? But I kept it because I was like, ooh, this could be a great talking point. And so the funny thing about that card is that this woman on the card who cleans houses, she could be the most trustworthy, Aunt Betty can clean your house like none other. But the problem is the card looked really sketchy, so I didn't trust it. And we were in the market for getting someone to come over our house and to clean it twice a month. That is exactly what we needed, but the branding on the card wasn't even legit. And we have so many great examples of that where it's not put together, and so people don't trust it. So
I think one of the biggest things that helped us early on was having a great looking website. We had a logo done by an amazing designer, Allie Mae, who kind of branded us and put our look together. and we had a cool blog. You know, it was a blogger blog, but it was cool, and we were talking about our work, and everything was together. And when people met us, they immediately just, for all they knew, we'd been in business for 10 years. Nobody even asked us how long we'd been in business because they felt safe because of the way the business looked. Yeah. And I think there's an amazing book that I was turned on to read by a guy named Kevin Swan, who's just a brilliant marketer. And he gave me this book to read called The 22 Immutable Laws. And in that book, it talks about perception is not reality. It says perception is the only reality. Perception is everything. Because, of course, it should be a given that we are legitimate. We have a great business and we produce great images and all that stuff. So we have to represent that through the way people see us, through our branding and our marketing and our logo and the way we look on Facebook and the way we act and the way we talk online and all that stuff. And if we have that together early on, and if you're going to invest in anything, don't buy the 51.2 and all this stuff. Invest in the way that your business is perceived, and that will take you so much farther, so much faster than anything else.
Yeah, so I would say step number 1, I would get my branding together. Step number 2 is I would have a place that clients can go to see my work, whether that be a website, whether that be a blog, even with, like, we use Showit for our website, and you can even get like a free 5-page website from them. Get somewhere online that you can put your stuff up. We'd really start like working Facebook. We would find couples that we knew who were engaged that we could just go out and do shoots of them. And then everyone has a gajillion friends. Brides know brides. Engaged people know, and other engaged people. So we would shoot their sessions and be like, hey, this is something that we're working on. We'd love to do this for you if you will just let us use your images to promote our business. And so we would upload those on Facebook, tag them in it, and that really just starts generating conversations with people. And that's how the word just starts to spread and grow your business.
And then the biggest key, of course, at that point is as soon as you get a client, the first client, blow them away with your service, because we are in a service-based industry. We're here to serve somebody else, and whatever they think you're going to do, whatever the contract says, you better do. How wide is the lens here? You better do this. Blow them away. Let them think it's going to take 60 days to get the pictures, and get them to them in 5 days. Let them think they're not getting any gifts from you, and send them a gift. Let them think that you're not going to go above and beyond for something, and then do it, and blow them away so they have a reason to talk about you on Facebook. So they have a reason to go, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe what they did. And they'll bring 10 of their friends knocking on your door real fast.
Okay, so Jody, could you raise your right hand like this? Raise your right hand.
It took me a second.
No, other right. The other one. Yeah, perfect. That's great. And then turn it sideways.
Stop! I had it right the first
No,
time.
No. The other one. The one on the other side. There you go. Hold it like that. That's perfect. And then Zach, can you go like this? Like this? Just go like this. Higher. Good. And then I'll do this. So they need to be this side, this much out of the contract. They have to expand this much. Okay, it was a good idea before I asked you to do any of that. I'm a dork.
That was very complicated, and I'm not sure about the payoff, but that was fun.
You know, it's really high risk, no return, really at all. So I have a ton of questions that I want to ask. I want to ask a bunch more questions. We are short on time, and we have a huge lineup of questions in the queue. So I'm gonna throw them up on the screen. If you could just go with just short answers on these, so we can get through as many as we can. And if they're kind of somewhat repeat questions or stuff, no problem, we can pass. But I want to make sure we have a chance. So first we have Sherry asked the question, "Hey guys, just wanted to know how it is working with your spouse." And this is the question my wife and I get, because we do our business very different than you do. But how
I definitely think that Jody and I happen to be very geared for it very well. We complement each other very well. You know, I'm big picture, she's managerial. We're both good technicians, so I think we complement each other well. And the key, I think more than anything, if you're going to work with a spouse, is defining your roles, and people know what they're doing, and they're doing what they love most of the time. I think that's huge.
And defining your work time, because it's really easy. We love our business, and it's really easy to let it overtake it, and then our marriage becomes our business, which goes out of line with what our priorities are. So just to make sure, like, all right, from here to here, this is work, and then this evening, it's us time. We're not talking about business. We're not talking about a new idea. We're not talking about how the Dane interview went.
And I think if you're going to work with a spouse, any business period, but especially working with a spouse, you've got to have a mission statement. You've got to know exactly why your business exists. And for us, so that we can serve our relationship with God, so we can have our relationship with each other, then our kids when we have kids, and then our clients, so that we keep those priorities in line and we're focused on those every single day. Otherwise, we're not sacrificing our marriage so we can book some more brides.
It's good for anyone to do, regardless if you're married or not.
But I think that's huge. Defining that is huge.
That's great. I love that you're taking care of all of your stakeholders, not just you, not just your clients, but you're accounting for all of them. I love that. One question here. Would love to hear more concrete info about what brought the images to the next level, which I really like because it's a question around not just your branding and how do you get to market, but once you get to market and you want to blow your clients out of the water, what are you doing and what have you done? Because I know one of the things you guys are famous for is, I had a great conversation this morning with Westcott about why they sponsor you and why they love you guys so much. And they were talking specifically about your commitment to the craft and not just your commitment to, being successful. And I want to hear more about that. Like, how did you bring your images to the next level? What were the investments you made? And again, unfortunately, we don't have much time, so answer that in like 10 seconds. Ready, go.
Okay. Come to our workshop.
I think when I first started out, I mentioned I worked for a yearbook company, and everything they shot was by volume. So everything was shot in JPEG, color corrected, perfect lighting, perfect everything. Even the head placement was in a specific little box. So I thought, that's how you shoot digital. It's got to be perfect. I didn't understand Photoshop, post-production, any of that stuff. So we just assumed that's how you shot. And even when we found out later that people do all this editing, we said, well, that's not in line with our priorities, is to do what the average wedding photographer does, which is spend 22 hours in post. We decided we're just going to keep being really good at photography and not really good at post-production. We don't do any post-production on our images. Everything is done a quick, simple edit in Lightroom to revert it back to a JPEG and then export it. So we spent all of our time figuring out what is lighting, how to understand it, what is color, how do we nail it in the camera, all that kind of stuff. And we've just adopted that. We want to be great at photography and not great at post-production. So I think that has helped more than anything, is just focusing on the photography and not on the editing.
That's great. Next
enough?
question. Yeah, it's great. How do you approach raising prices down the road for the clients who helped you build your business? This is a great question. I think a lot of folks wrestle with this, especially if they started at a low price point. How do you begin to make the jump? Thanks for asking the question, Rob.
Yeah, amazing question, and it's a pretty thick question. There's a lot to it, but supply and demand. That's just a simple law that exists in any kind of industry. If there's a high demand on you, that means your pricing should go up. If nobody's demanding you, then you can't raise your prices because nobody's going to pay for it. And then, of course, anytime you do raise your prices, you have to show the client why there's value there. And if photography is now a commodity because of digital, which it is, which means you can get photography at any kind, at any price point, at anywhere in the world at any time, $300 to $30,000. So why would anybody pay you more than the commodity price? Well, you have to show them a value. You have to give them value. And to us, the value is in the service. Being good at photography is a given. You should absolutely be a great photographer, but the average client, like Jody mentioned earlier, can't tell the difference between really, really good and great. They don't know. So we have to show them something more. We have to provide an amazing service.
And the question I asked, how do you approach that with your past clients who helped you build your business? And when we sit down with clients and we say, hey, this is our pricing, we tell them that, as we continue to shoot, and as our experience continues to go up, that we're giving our clients and stuff, our prices will inevitably raise. Is that right? Inevitably raise. And so essentially communicate to them, you're getting a great deal right now. Enjoy it. So
yeah,
and then
great.
They're ooh.
And not to stay on that question, I think it's so important, but we do a little chart where we were shooting $1,500 weddings all the way up to clients paying us a lot more than that, 6, 7, 8, 9 times more money than that. And we kept referrals going through those bases, even though a lot of times when you raise your prices up a lot, you'll lose a lot of your referral base because The clients just literally just simply can't afford it. But because we provided such an exciting, unique, and amazing service, people were willing to do whatever they had to do, stretch their budget, move a wedding date, save longer, whatever they had to do, or shift other things that weren't as important into the wedding budget to make room for, because they felt so strongly about the service that we were providing for them. So that's huge. Service is number one priority for us.
Great answers to all these questions. In fact, you've addressed like 7 other questions here, because you have. So I want to make sure people get credit for asking. So Antonio asked the question: how did you come up with the $1,500 price point for your weddings? And if I understand it right, it was pretty much just asserted, and that every year you're trying to create more value. So as you create value, you can justify the price. Is that fair?
Yeah, we just kind of pulled that out of the air, and kind of like at that point we looked at what were the cheap wedding photographers doing, what were the average, what were the high end, and like we felt like $1,500 was a decent price point for the experience, for the quality of work that we were giving. And at that case, it was like the one size fits all. We just had one package, that was it, and you got like everything in the kitchen sink.
Yeah, and as we've continued to raise our prices, it was always built on demand is one thing, but then also on what we felt like we were worth. And for us, we've always said, if we're not going to run a business and have it do what we want it to do, then let's just go work for someone else. Why do a business if it's not going to pay you what you want to make, if it's not going to allow you to do the things you want to do, just go work for somebody else. So our current pricing is really built on that.
I love that. I mean, it really answers the next question, which is, how do you justify as new higher prices, which is exactly it. I mean, ultimately, I think there's a lot of folks who are working that are actually paying clients to take their pictures, and it's unfortunate because they're not wrapping their mind around really what are we doing here. We're not doing this to get our self-esteem met. We're not doing this because we have to. We're not enslaved to it. It's meant to be freeing, and that means that there needs to be some decisions about how it is that you're approaching the marketplace. And I know for me, I totally relate to that, making decisions out of goofy motivation. And when the point isn't that you do it perfect. The point is when you realize you're doing it for a weird motivation, to stop and to come at it in a new direction. Yeah. So I love that response. Thank you for that. One question here from...
Yeah, and I know a lot.
Oh, go ahead.
Nope. You go.
Well,
what if I don't want to go?
We spent $750 on our own wedding photography before we were photographers and stuff like that, and so it's always been hard for me for us to continually raise our price point and ask for more for people than what I even spent on my own wedding. But when we really broke down the hours that we were doing of work, and we knew what we were giving them was great quality stuff, when you break down the hours, so say it takes 30 hours for you to do a wedding, from, emailing, from the first meeting to the emails to all the details, everything, editing, image delivery, everything. And you're like, okay, well, what am I making an hour, and is that worth it? And so you need to either, one, figure out how you can spend less than 30 hours, like maybe editing more efficiently or shooting better or whatever, or up your prices. But it's hard. It's always hard.
Yeah. You could talk about pricing for hours.
Well, and it's funny, it's a lot of folks have been asking questions around pricing, like, and this is just kind of a honest question, and I have an answer to this one too. I want to hear your guys' first, but have you ever lowered your prices to get the gig?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think no, we have never done that before. We've made a few exceptions built around, like, we were shooting a wedding on a Saturday, and it was our first year, and I went out and shot a thing on the side for a different rate or something like that. But we've never decided to lower prices. What we've done instead, which I think has helped so much, is like we mentioned earlier, we decided, how can we add value? Somebody, we've literally had clients like, can you just bring it down $500 or whatever? And it's like, we'd rather add some value by adding something to what we can do for our service, and therefore increasing the value in the client's mind to where it hits that point where they feel like, okay, I feel like you're now worth what you're asking.
So for example, like what we'll practically do is, like, they want us, the disc of images, and an engagement session, and they're like, this is the price point that I'm working with, and we're like, I'm sorry, we can't come down on that, but we really like you. We think you're a great fit for our business, and we'd love to shoot your wedding. So what we'll do is we'll gift you a complimentary 1-hour engagement session. So kind of like adding value, or like maybe a gallery wrap is something that they really want. So just adding value if they're the kind of client that we want to be working with.
That's one last question. Oh wait, two last questions. And this is just because I love Tamara Lackey, but she just threw a question in late, and she said, is it a company branding tenet to wear a black first layer under a V-top? Looks great, by the way.
Sure. You know how many times
Hey,
I, like,
you know
walk
what? You
out
know
of the
what?
closet and I'm like,
Yeah, that's awkward. Well, what's really awkward is
just
I wore
like-
my black underneath mine too, but I forgot my V-neck. So yes, it is, Tamara, and I certainly hope you are wearing the uniform. Otherwise, you're in big trouble. One last question is how do you separate being professional and being yourself? Am I professional? There's a lot different ways you could read this question, and I have my own thoughts on it too. Oh, I should mention too. Well, I won't get into it right now. What are your thoughts on this idea of professionalism and personal boundaries, and how do you sort that out? Because I think a lot of folks wrestle with this question.
totally.
Yeah, I think one, there's always going to be a perception about you. For Jody and I, we're trying our best, to let who we really are come across. But of course, it only is as personal as it can really be. We are who we are behind closed doors, and we can't always put that out there exactly the way that we are, even though we try to do that, I think, as best as we can. And I think that sometimes people have that misperception that professionalism equals impersonal. And I don't think it should be that way for this kind of an industry. We're in a service wedding. We're with people at the most intimate day of their life, making the most important decisions. And they want to feel like Zack and Jody showed up, like their friends came. And does that mean that we're BFF with every single client that we work with? No. Some of them, yes, we are. But that does mean that we put that out, enough of us out there that they feel like they really connect to us and they can trust us, with their day.
I think it's important to kind of figure out what is your brand. Like, is your brand the edgy, hard, rough photographer? Like, people go to restaurants for experiences where the servers are rude to them. Like, that is what they want. And like,
that'd be a great photography business.
Sweet. Like, is that who you're trying to communicate? And then, like, making sure that everything that online is going back to that. Like, Zack and I, granted we're not perfect, but we try and communicate that, hey, we're fun, we love people, we love God. And the last thing we want to do is, like, have a weird photo on our Facebook page that contradicts, like, who we are. So I think it can be a fine line, but I think something definitely to remember is online there's no way to separate the personal from the business. Like, people are like, well, I have my personal page and I just do whatever on that. I can talk about people and whatever. And then I have my business page. It's all connected and people are going to see both. So, yeah.
I'm getting caught right now because it does. I'm getting caught between talking in the chat room and listening to what you're saying and engaging on it, all these different things. And there's so much in this conversation that honestly, I do wish we were neighbors, and I wish we could go have coffee and extend this, because I just feel like there's a sense of camaraderie in this, and I get this even in the chat room as people are getting involved in the dialogue, that we really are in this thing together, and sorting through the different approaches or ways of being that we are relative to our business, whether it be around professionalism or our personality or whatever. The overarching message that I'm getting out of what you guys are saying is this sense of authenticity. And I had a friend a long time ago say that if you're trying to be authentic, you've lost the battle. And in reality, it's a matter of being authentic, as showing up as you are. And part of that is truth telling, and part of that is being vulnerable and candid and all that sort of thing. But most of it is just being you in your own skin, whatever that looks like. And if you guys are listening to this at home and you're kind of curious about, how do I go about doing that? I'd encourage you to pause with that question, because it's not about how to go and do it. You just are, and it's a decision. And so much of that is accessible right now where you're at. So I hope that's an encouragement. And I know you guys are an encouragement to me, so I'm just so grateful for you being on the show today. there's a lot of questions we didn't get a chance to get to, and they're still in the queue, and I apologize, but I want to honor your time, and I know we got to get
round
rolling.
2.
Yeah, well, would you come back? I'd actually love to have you come back.
Oh yeah,
I think it would be great.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Q&A with
Cool,
the
cool.
Grays. Bring it on.
All right. Well, and now tell us really quick, because we got to go in a second, but you guys do have some cool things coming. I know you're going on tour with DJ with the Flow thing, and I think that there's a lot of pieces to your world, including the workshops and don't you do that ask and learn kind of thing on Tuesdays? I want to hear what people are up to so people can have a chance to tune in with you. So can you fill us in?
Right. Yeah, every Tuesday, and this kind of started because we get emails all the time, like asking, like, hey, what camera do you use, or what lens do you recommend, or how do you do this? And so what we do is every Tuesday we have our Photography Tuesday tips and tricks, whether it be about business or shooting. And so if you go to our blog, which is grayphotograph.com/blog, and click Tuesday tips and tricks under the categories, you will see every single Tuesday we do something, whether it be on shooting and stuff. So that's been really great for photographers, just to come and just get information. We're an open book, and there's no secrets, so you'll find a lot of good stuff in there, hopefully.
Yeah, so there's tons of content in there. We also have a newsletter that has even more content, which is great. Videos and all kinds of cool stuff in there, showing how we do what we do. And then, we're just around. You can check out our photographer's website. You can click on it from our blog or from our regular website to see where we may be next, speaking or, doing workshops or that kind of stuff. On the 24th, we start the Pass Tour, which is going to kind of wrap around the country in 18 cities. We're going to be going live from the tour bus for 5 weeks straight. So it's going to be crazy. So that's with DJ and Show It, and that's going to be a blast. And Promise Tangeman's going to be on that, as well as Kevin Swan and Sean Austin from Kiss Books. So we're super excited. Just a really, really fun crew that we're going to be hanging out with for 5 weeks. It should be a blast.
That's a great info.
Yeah, and seating is limited. They're limiting it to 60 seats. So if there's any tickets left, I'm not sure if there is, you want to get them quick just because it's pretty limited.
Get on it.
That's great. That's great. Tamara Lackey says, good luck on the tour. Insist on private showers. I don't know what that's about. You guys can talk with her about it.
I like how you think, my friend.
Totally.
Shower for girls,
okay,
shower
so we're
for boys.
even more awkward. Okay, so we're going to be done. And thank you guys for being on the show. I will invite you back, and people are already interested in you coming back. So thanks again, and have a great summer on your tour, guys. Take care.
Thanks,
you.
Dane.
Thanks, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.